Hello everyone, this is Sykes Music Studio. Today we are back in our sequencer tutorial. As you can see, we've added quite a bit since our last episode. Let's talk about what we've added to our presentation mode, and then we will play around with it and make some beautiful music. And then we'll hop into our patch and see what we've changed. So right off the bat, we have our major minor selector, but we've now also added a key selector. So this will set the tonic, your initial note, and then all the future notes will be chosen based off of this note. We have an octave selector, so 5 different starting octaves to choose from very low to very high. We have a seed selector. Now this is really cool. This sets the seed for our random number generators. So in theory, if you have it set to seed 1, you'll have the same random sequence of pitches each time. Now, currently there is some interesting issues with this, but we'll talk more about that in a bit because it's very strange. For loop melody and rhythms, they're basically untouched, although we have added an initial value for our rhythms. So if we want to start on a faster note, we can, or we can start on a slower note or anything in between. Our loop together is now working the way I wanted, so you can see while loop together is enabled, if you click on any of our individual options, they will not toggle. But then if we turn this off, you can see that everything is back in, you can select the individual options. And then finally, we've added our loop velocity and loop duration. So again, just taking the code from melody and rhythms and applying that to our velocity and duration. So how many notes per loop do we want to have our velocity sequence? How many repetitions of that? Same with duration. How many notes do you want to, note values do you want to loop? And then their repetitions, or durations, I should say. Yeah, so that's where we're at so far. Let's go ahead and play around with this, and then we'll hop into our patch. So let's see. All right, so that's sounding quite nice. Let's go ahead and reset. We'll change the seed, and then we'll change it back, and let's see if it's doing what I want. As you can see, that was quite a bit different. And then it's the same again for some reason. So that's a very weird bug. We'll have to iron that out. But so far, I think it's sounding quite nice. It's doing everything that it's supposed to be doing. It does the way I want it to, minus the seeds so far as I'm aware. Let's hop into our patching mode and see what's going on. So right off the bat, we have these color panels. I should have talked about those when we were looking at our patcher. This was just to differentiate the different areas. So we have all our major sequencer elements in purple here, and then all the other loop options have their own color. Same with loop together. It just kind of helps differentiate what does what. And yeah, you can obviously change these to whatever color you want. I just chose primary and secondary colors, and then I put the colors that make the primary colors that make the secondary colors next to each other, just to see if I could, to be honest. But yeah, I think it looks kind of nice. And yeah, that's again mostly just to make it really clear what's what. Now you can see that I've encapsulated quite a bit of our patch here. We have our rhythms have been encapsulated, melody, and then our loop velocity and duration. But let's start at the top and see what's going on. So we have our ignore click. This is the message that you send to a toggle to get it so that it will not turn on and off. So you can see I'm clicking on this. Ignore click is set to 1. If I set ignore click to 0, I can then toggle that toggle. So these messages, there's a lot of different messages that interact with specific objects. Let's go ahead and just real quick, we'll open up help for toggle. As you can see, it'll take a bang, it'll take a 0 or a 1 to turn it on or off. But you can also set values, you can output values. So all the messages, or a lot of the messages that you can use to interact with specific objects, will be listed in messages here. So as you can see, it'll take these different messages, and some of them, obviously, like you can see that our ignore click isn't in there, but if you go into inspector, you can also find other parameters that you can edit. So ignore click is just ignore click with no space. Now, moving down the line, we have our seed. So seed is just being sent into a send, and that's going into anything that has any sort of random number generator. So as you can see, that's going into our earn. It also goes into our drunk for our rhythms. It's very, very cool, very useful. Again, I'm not entirely sure why we're getting different output from it, but as you could see, if we reset it and try and play with it a little bit, it'll get back to the correct sequence. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. Well, that's a bug that we'll need to work out. Real quick, we should also go into here and check out how our initial value works. So that's going into our 6th inlet here. So our inlet 6, it's just going into a set, and then a $1 is a variable. So any number that comes in here will be the variable there. So it'll be set 0. The message sends as set 0 into the drunk, and our 0 for our rhythm, oops, not that rhythms, this rhythms, our 0 for our rhythms is a 16th note. So 0 is fast. And then as we increase this, you can see that our default is, or let's see, set 3. There we go. So the drunk is going to be set to 3, and our 3 in our rhythms collection is a half note. So very slow. All right. Let's see. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. We have separated our random that controls our oh, that's right. We changed it so that our earn has the correct number of, or sorry, our calls have the correct number for that earn, and then we have just a general random number earn here, and that's controlling other things. That's not controlling our leap check anymore, I don't believe. Right. So we'll get into our leap check in a minute. But anyway, we do have our generic random number send now. And that looks like it's just controlling our velocity and dynamics. Right. So let's go ahead and talk about our octave check. So instead, we're taking from our octave here, and that's coming from a leap check. So that's how we're controlling our octave range now, which is just infinitely better. It's not random anymore. It's actually based on what octave you're in. So this is our leap check. As you can see, we are we have a big old trigger here. So our first integer is going to come in and compare to our previous. And if 1 is greater or less than a leap of a third in either direction, it will trigger this route, which will bang on the previous number, or it'll bang on a +1 or a -1, and then the previous number gets added or subtracted from that. And then if neither of those are true, it doesn't send anything and will just, or it sends a 1 to the gate to allow the current pitch to go through. All right. So again, this is getting very, very complicated in here, but I'm trying to go over everything in a clear pattern. So then this is going to, the leap check, once we have our pitch value from that, will be sent through the octave, and then the octave will be picked up in here. And then we haven't really changed the code much, just what is being fed into it. All right, so moving down, we added more to our calls. So we have, as you can see, 4 octaves instead of 3 now. And this is because we needed to, it was a number range issue. So in order to make sure that we didn't go into negative numbers, I just added more octaves. And then started at the octave above the lowest one so that it had some room to move down or up. Let's see, what else should we talk about here? Velocity dynamics. This is just the sine cosine. I'm going to change that this entirely because, like I said before, our velocity range was a little too wild. And even after what I thought was pretty heavy compression, it still had a bit more dynamic range than I wanted. But I still wanted to keep dynamic range. So we'll play around with the numbers and what specifically we're using to differentiate our velocity and dynamics. So I don't think I'm going to keep sine and cosine because they are, I would rather just have 2 random numbers being fed into that. And as you can see, we are taking 1 random number. So what I'll probably end up doing is copying this, just have another earn22 and change from send rand to send rand1 or some other kind of easy to remember send, and then take the send and just have a rand1 and a rand2 2 going in here, and they'll just have different control over our velocity and duration. Now, again, for velocity and duration, it's the same basic code for melody and rhythms. So we're not going to spend too much time looking in here. But as you can see, we don't have the drunk on either of these. So basically, it would be better to copy from your loop melody than rhythm, so you don't have to change quite as much. We have our octave selector. And this is real simple, just sending a number from 0 to 5. We're going to subtract 2 from it. And that way, if we want it very low, it's going to subtract 2 octaves. If we want it very high, it's going to add 2 octaves. So that way, -24, that still is going to be a positive with our +36 here. And yeah, let's see. Is there anything else that we've added here that we should go over? Again, just ignore clicks going into the toggles. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we've added to our patch this week. Next week, we will work on fixing our seed issues. We'll work on, what else do we really need to do here? I don't know. I'll have to play around with it, but I think we're getting a lot closer to a finished product here. As always, I really appreciate all of your support. If you have any questions or comments for me, please leave them in the comments section below. And I hope you all have a great day. Thanks. Bye.